The mysterious arrival. The stars had always fascinated Kira, the alien princess, but none of them had ever felt as important as the one that called her to Earth. For years, she had heard stories about humans and their planet, stories filled with wonder and mystery. Yet, nothing prepared her for the journey she was about to undertake, a journey that would take her across vast galaxies, through space and time, to find someone she had never met but somehow knew she needed to find. Kira stood at the window of her ship, her eyes scanning the endless stretch of space. She was not just a princess, she was the future of her people, a warrior, and a leader. But today, she was something different, something more determined. Her mission was clear, to find him, the human who had been lost to Earth's silence. It all began when a faint signal reached her. It was a message, a whisper from Earth, and it called her name. At first, it was nothing more than static, a noise in the vast emptiness of space. But as time went on, the signal grew stronger, and Kira could feel it, deep within her. It was as though it was calling her specifically, urging her to come, to find the truth. Why had he been abandoned? Why had Earth, a planet filled with so many life forms, cast aside one of its own? Kira could feel the weight of these questions pressing on her, even as she prepared for her journey. Earth had always been a place of interest for her people, but no one had ever ventured there for this purpose before. It was dangerous, uncertain, but Kira couldn't ignore the pull. Something about this human, this missing person, felt like destiny. Her ship entered Earth's atmosphere, the view from above stunning, yet filled with an unfamiliar sense of dread. She had never felt this before, not even during the most intense battles she had faced. As she descended, her thoughts raced. This planet was home to millions, yet she was searching for just one person. One person who had been lost, abandoned by his own kind. What had happened to him? Kira's ship touched down softly in an open field outside a city. The lights in the distance blinked like tiny stars, but it wasn't the same. There was no excitement, no warmth in the glow. As she stepped out of the ship, she felt the cool earth air rush past her. She looked around, taking in the vastness of the land. It was strange to her, so different from the familiar landscapes of her home. She had seen many worlds, but none like this. She adjusted her cloak, feeling the weight of her mission. The world before her was filled with unknowns, but she would not turn back. The humans she had heard of, what had become of them? And this man, the one she sought, why had he been left behind? He had been important, or so the story said. But now, he was a mystery, a puzzle that Kira had to solve. With each step she took, the questions grew louder in her mind. What had Earth done to him? Why had no one come for him? As she moved closer to the city, she began to feel a strange sense of isolation. It was as if she were the only one who cared, the only one who remembered the man she was looking for. The streets were quiet, too quiet, and the buildings towered over her, casting long shadows as the sun began to set. Kira paused for a moment, her mind racing. The signal had brought her here, but what now? Where was he? Was he alive? Had he ever been? She couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. She had hoped for answers, but now, standing in this strange city, she felt more lost than ever. She pushed forward, determined to find him. As the darkness began to settle over the city, she caught sight of a sign in the distance. It was faded, almost as if it had been forgotten, just like the man she sought. She walked towards it, her mind filled with questions, but also with something else, a sense of urgency. Why had Earth abandoned him? What had they done to him? And most importantly, why had the signal reached her, of all people? Kira had no answers, but she was not about to give up. She had traveled across the stars for this moment, and she would not rest until she found the truth. No matter how dark, no matter how dangerous, she would uncover the secrets hidden within Earth's silence. As she stood there, looking out over the city, she couldn't shake the feeling that this journey was just beginning. And that the answers she sought were far closer than she realized. The search begins. Kira's footsteps echoed in the quiet streets as she made her way deeper into the city. The signs of life were there, but they felt distant, hidden behind the cold concrete walls and dimly lit windows. It was as if the city itself was asleep, unaware of the strange visitor walking its streets. She had seen cities before, but none like this, none so empty, so devoid of energy. The silence was unnerving. Her mind raced with questions, each one more troubling than the last. Why had Earth abandoned this man, the one she was sent to find? What could have happened to him that caused his people to forget him? The questions gnawed at her, but Kira knew one thing for sure, she couldn't stop now. Not when she had come this far. She paused at a corner, her eyes scanning the surroundings. The city looked so familiar, yet so foreign. It was unlike any place she had visited, even on the farthest reaches of the galaxy. There was no war here, no chaos, no signs of the usual struggles that marked the end of civilizations. Earth seemed peaceful, almost too peaceful, and that made her uneasy. What was hiding beneath this calm facade? Kira reached into the folds of her cloak and pulled out a small device. It was sleek, compact, and designed for tracking. It had been calibrated to detect the faintest of signals, and as she activated it, a soft glow appeared on its surface. The signal she had been following was still there, but it was weaker now, almost as if it were fading away. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Was he still alive? Had something happened to him after all this time? The signal had brought her here, but it seemed to be slipping further into the past with every step she took. Her heart beat faster as she moved down the street, following the device's guidance. The search was growing more urgent, the answers slipping through her fingers like sand. She had hoped for clarity, for something that would make sense of all the chaos, but instead, she was only left with more confusion. As Kira turned a corner, she was met with a sight that stopped her in her tracks. A tall building loomed ahead, its structure grand and imposing, but what caught her attention was the large, rusted sign hanging above the entrance. It read, "The Lost Archives." Kira's eyes narrowed as she approached. It wasn't just any building, it was a place of records, a place that might hold the key to the answers she was looking for. If the humans had truly abandoned the man she was searching for, surely there would be records, documents, anything that could explain why. With determined steps, Kira made her way inside. The door creaked as she pushed it open, the dim light from the outside fading as she entered the shadows of the building. The air was musty, filled with the scent of old paper and forgotten memories. The silence here was even more intense, as if time itself had frozen in this place. She moved through rows upon rows of ancient files, each one labeled and organized with precision. Yet, despite the order, there was something unsettling about the place. It felt like a graveyard of knowledge, a place where important information had been abandoned, lost to time. Kira walked past countless shelves, but nothing stood out to her, until she found it. At the far end of the room, a large wooden desk stood, covered in dust. On it, there was a single book, open to a page that seemed to call out to her. Kira approached the desk cautiously, her heart pounding. The book's pages were yellowed with age, but the writing was still legible. She leaned closer, reading the words that were scrawled across the page. Project Solitude, the human who vanished. The word sent a chill through her. Was this the man she had been searching for? Was he the subject of a project? Her fingers trembled as she turned the page, desperate for more answers. What she found next shook her to her core. The project had been classified, its details hidden away for decades. It was a program designed to study humans, to understand their potential beyond what Earth had ever imagined. But then, something went wrong. The man who had been the subject of the project had vanished, and the government had erased all records of him. His disappearance had been covered up, and he had been forgotten by all, but not by Kira. Her mind raced. The humans hadn't just abandoned him, they had erased him from existence, as though he had never mattered. The truth was much darker than she had ever imagined. But why? Why had they gone to such extremes to make sure no one remembered him? As Kira closed the book, a single word echoed in her mind: solitude. The project's name, the man's fate, it all made sense now. He wasn't just abandoned, he had been isolated, trapped in a world that wanted nothing to do with him. And now, Kira had to find him, not just for the sake of her mission, but for his freedom. The search had only just begun, and the answers were more complicated than she had ever imagined. But one thing was clear: she would not rest until she found him and uncovered the truth behind Earth's betrayal. The hidden truth. Kira stood in the dimly lit room, the weight of the book in her hands heavier than she could have imagined. The truth was darker than she had ever anticipated, and yet it only fueled her determination. The man she had come to find had not just been abandoned, he had been erased, hidden away in the shadows of Earth's secrets. The question that lingered in her mind was no longer just why he was abandoned, but who would go to such lengths to keep him hidden. And why? Her fingers brushed the edges of the book, but the answers it provided only deepened the mystery. Project Solitude had been a government initiative, but the details were too vague, too carefully concealed. Whoever was behind it wanted to make sure no one remembered this man, this human who had vanished. But why? What was so important about him that the government, or whoever controlled the project, felt the need to erase him from existence? Kira's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. She quickly closed the book and turned to face the door. A shadow appeared at the threshold, and for a moment, Kira's heart stopped. Was someone here to stop her from uncovering the truth? The figure stepped into the room, a tall man in a dark uniform. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the room before resting on Kira. There was no surprise in his gaze, he had been expecting her. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice cold and authoritative. "This is a place of secrets. A place you're not meant to discover." Kira's hand instinctively went to the hilt of her weapon, but she stopped herself. She had come this far. She couldn't let fear dictate her actions now. Instead, she stood tall, meeting his gaze with defiance. "I'm here for answers," Kira replied, her voice steady. "I've come too far to turn back now. I know what happened to him. I know what Project Solitude was. And I'm not leaving until I learn everything." The man's expression remained unreadable, but there was a flicker of something, recognition, perhaps fear. Kira wasn't sure, but it was enough to make him hesitate. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," he said quietly. "The truth you're looking for will destroy everything you think you know. You don't understand the power behind this project. It was never meant to see the light of day. He wasn't just a human. He was a key, a piece of something much bigger. If you continue down this path, you'll be putting yourself in grave danger." Kira's eyes narrowed. "Danger is something I've faced before. I'm not afraid of it." The man took a step closer, his tone softening, almost as if he were trying to warn her. "It's not just your life you're risking. There are forces at work here, forces that have been hidden for generations. If you're not careful, you'll find yourself in the middle of something far more dangerous than you can imagine." Kira's mind raced. She had known this mission wouldn't be easy, but the man's words only deepened the web of mystery she had already uncovered. What was this key he referred to? And what did it have to do with the man she was searching for? Before she could ask him more, the man turned to leave. "You've been warned," he said over his shoulder, his voice trailing off. "The truth is out there, but some truths are meant to stay hidden." With that, he vanished into the shadows, leaving Kira alone once again in the silence of the archives. Kira stood still, her mind reeling. His warning had only fueled her resolve. Whatever the key was, whatever danger it posed, she couldn't stop now. She had to find him. She had to uncover the truth. As she left the archives, Kira knew one thing for certain: this was no longer just about finding a lost human. It was about uncovering a conspiracy that reached far deeper than she could have imagined. Earth was hiding something, and she was going to make sure that whatever it was, the world would know the truth. The city was still eerily quiet, and as Kira walked the streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Every corner she turned, every shadow she passed, seemed to hold a hidden presence. The sense of being followed grew stronger, but Kira wasn't about to back down. Whoever was after her, whoever wanted to stop her, they would have to do more than shadow her every move. She wasn't going to let them win. Her journey had only just begun, but Kira knew that the road ahead was going to be far more treacherous than she ever expected. The forces working against her were powerful, but they had underestimated her. She would find the man she sought, and she would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. And as she walked into the heart of the city, her mind already racing with plans, one thing was clear: this wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a battle for the truth, and Kira wasn't about to lose. The Shadow's Pursuit. Kira couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, even though the streets around her remained eerily still. The warnings from the man in the archives echoed in her mind, his words hanging over her like a dark cloud. The truth will destroy everything you think you know. What truth? What was this key that he had mentioned? And what did it have to do with the human she was desperately trying to find? As she moved through the city, Kira kept her senses sharp, aware of every noise, every shift in the air around her. The streets, once silent, now seemed alive with a quiet tension. Was it just her imagination, or was something out there, waiting for her to make the next move? She couldn't tell. The feeling of being hunted was growing stronger, but she refused to show any weakness. She had come too far to let fear stop her now. Kira reached a small alleyway and stopped to catch her breath, her eyes scanning the surroundings once more. The city was vast, and finding him seemed like an impossible task, but the signal she had been tracking was still faintly pulsing, guiding her step by step. It was the only thing that kept her going. She couldn't afford to waste time. She had to find him before they found her. Suddenly, a shadow moved at the edge of her vision. Kira's instincts kicked in. Without thinking, she ducked into the alley and pressed herself against the cold stone wall. Her hand instinctively reached for her weapon, but she knew she had to remain calm. If she confronted whoever was after her, she risked being exposed. She needed answers, not a fight. The shadow grew closer, but Kira stayed hidden, her breath steady, her eyes narrowed. She watched as a figure in dark clothing passed by, moving swiftly and silently. There was something familiar about the way they moved, a sense of precision and purpose that didn't belong to just any random person. They were trained. They were looking for something, or someone. Kira waited until the figure had passed and then followed, keeping her distance. Whoever this was, they were part of the mystery. She needed to know who they were and why they were following her. Was it connected to the man she was searching for? Were they the ones who had erased his existence? The figure led her through a series of backstreets, down alleys, and into a hidden part of the city Kira hadn't seen before. It was old, abandoned, and seemed to be untouched by time. The buildings were decaying, their windows shattered, and the streets were overgrown with weeds. This part of the city was a forgotten place, a relic of something long past. The figure stopped in front of an old building, its door slightly ajar. Kira hesitated. This was it. The place that felt like it held the answers she was looking for. But should she go in? The man had warned her about the danger of the truth, but she couldn't turn back now. There was too much at stake. Kira stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She pushed the door open slowly, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The building looked abandoned, yet there was a strange sense of life in the silence. It felt like a place where secrets were kept, a place where history was buried. As Kira stepped further inside, she heard footsteps approaching from behind. She whirled around, ready to defend herself, but the figure was already gone. Whoever had led her here was now out of sight, leaving her alone in this strange, haunting place. She continued deeper into the building, the feeling of being watched growing stronger with every step. The silence was suffocating, and the shadows seemed to stretch out, creeping along the walls like living things. Kira wasn't sure what she expected to find here, but she knew it was something important. Something that could change everything. At the far end of the room, she noticed a flicker of light. It was coming from behind a set of heavy curtains, the edges glowing faintly. She moved towards it, her steps cautious. When she pulled back the curtains, she was greeted with a sight that made her heart stop. There, in the center of the room, was a large glass tank, filled with a strange, glowing liquid. Inside the tank floated something, someone, a human. But it wasn't just any human. It was the man she had been searching for. His body was suspended in the liquid, his eyes closed as if in a deep sleep, his expression peaceful, yet eerily distant. Kira's breath caught in her throat. This was him. The man who had been erased, the one who had vanished. But why was he here? Why was he kept in this strange, life-sustaining tank? What had they done to him? And more importantly, why? As she approached the tank, a voice spoke from the shadows, sending a chill down her spine. "Ah, you found him." Kira turned swiftly, her hand on her weapon once more, but the figure who spoke was not one she had expected. It was the man from the archives, the one who had warned her to stop her search. He stepped into the light, his expression calm, almost knowing, as if he had anticipated her every move. "You shouldn't have come here," he said softly, his eyes fixed on the suspended human in the tank. "Now you know too much." Kira's heart raced as she faced him. What is this? Why is he here? The man's lips curled into a faint smile, but there was no warmth in it. He's not just a person. He's the key to everything. And now that you found him, you've set something in motion that you cannot undo. Kira took a step forward, her voice unwavering. "I will uncover the truth, no matter what you try to stop me from doing." The man's expression darkened. "Then you'll see, Princess, that sometimes the truth is far more dangerous than the lies you've been told." The awakening. The words of the man from the archives lingered in Kira's mind like a haunting melody. He's the key to everything. What did that mean? What was so important about this human, this man who had been hidden away for so long? And why had Earth gone to such extreme lengths to keep him from the world? Kira stepped closer to the glass tank, her breath fogging up the surface as she peered inside. The human, his features were so familiar, yet distant. She felt an overwhelming urge to reach out, to do something, anything, to wake him from whatever slumber he was trapped in. But she knew better. This wasn't just a simple rescue mission, there were far darker forces at play. "You've set something in motion that you cannot undo," the man had said. His words echoed in her ears as she watched the motionless figure suspended in the tank. What had she unknowingly triggered by finding him? And who was this man really? The man in the shadows, the one who had warned her, stood still, watching her closely, his face unreadable. Kira's eyes narrowed as she turned to face him. She was done with questions. She needed answers. She needed the truth. Why was he hidden away, she demanded, her voice firm, not allowing any room for evasion. What is so important about him? The man didn't immediately answer. Instead, he stepped forward, his hand brushing against a control panel hidden behind the curtains. The soft hum of machinery filled the room as the tank began to emit a low, glowing light. The liquid inside shifted, and for the first time, the human in the tank stirred. Kira froze. Her heart raced. Was he waking up? The human's fingers twitched, and then his eyes opened slowly, blinking as if he were seeing the world for the first time. Kira's breath caught in her throat. He was alive. He was real. She had found him, and now, everything was about to change. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, there was recognition. But then, confusion overtook him. He looked around, his gaze drifting over the unfamiliar surroundings, before settling back on Kira. His voice was hoarse, as though it hadn't been used in years. Who are you?" he rasped, his words a mixture of fear and curiosity. Kira's mind raced. This was the man she had been searching for, the one whose disappearance had sparked her journey to Earth. But there was something unsettling in his gaze. He seemed different. Not just physically, there was a depth in his eyes, a weariness, as if he had seen things beyond his understanding. "My name is Kira," she said softly, trying to reassure him. "I've come to find you. You've been hidden away for a long time. Do you know why?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at her as if he were trying to piece together the fragments of his memories. "Hidden away," he repeated, his voice trembling. I don't remember. All I remember is being alone. And then nothing." Kira's heart sank. Had they erased his memories? Was that part of the project? He seemed so broken, so lost. The man was a puzzle, and she needed to understand the pieces, but something was holding him back, something was stopping him from fully remembering who he was. The man's gaze shifted to the control panel, then back to Kira. "You shouldn't have come here," he whispered, as though he had just realized the danger. "You don't know what you've awakened. The project wasn't just about me. It was about us." Kira's eyes widened. "What do you mean by us?" But before he could respond, the room was filled with the sound of alarms. Red lights flashed overhead, and the doors to the building slammed shut with a deafening noise. Kira's body tensed, her instincts screaming that they weren't alone anymore. "Get him out of here," the man said urgently, his voice suddenly filled with clarity. "They're coming. They'll stop you from leaving, and they'll stop me from remembering. You have to go, now." Kira hesitated. She didn't trust this sudden shift in his behavior. But the urgency in his voice was impossible to ignore. There was no time for hesitation. She turned to the human in the tank. "Can you walk?" she asked quickly. He nodded, though it was clear the effort was taxing him. He wasn't fully recovered, he was weak, vulnerable. But he was the key. And Kira couldn't afford to fail now. The room shook as the ground vibrated beneath her feet, a low rumble filling the air. Something was happening, something big, and they were right in the center of it. Kira grabbed his arm, supporting him as they moved towards the back exit. But the moment they reached the door, it slammed shut, locking them in. The voice of the man from the archives crackled through the intercom speakers, his tone calm, almost amused. "You've gone too far, princess. You can't protect him. You can't protect yourself." Kira's eyes narrowed. They knew she was here. The sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. It was too late to escape unnoticed. The human beside her tensed. "They won't let you take me," he whispered, a cold determination in his voice. "But I'll fight with you. We have to stop them, before they stop us." Kira didn't have time to question his words. The building was closing in on them, and they were running out of time. If they wanted to survive, they would have to face whatever was coming, together. "Then let's make sure they don't win," Kira said, her voice steady, despite the chaos around them. The final showdown was about to begin, and nothing would stop them from uncovering the truth.